thank you so much for joining us here at Movement Day. I know it's unfortunate you couldn't be with us, but thankful that you would have us here. Would you be able to kind of share just a little bit about your heart and this opportunity you're getting in going to Israel?
Yeah, thanks, Grant. Sorry I can't be with all y'all there on Movement Day. I was really looking forward to it. It was on my schedule, but very unique opportunity came up to go visit Israel. Now, I've led tours over there over the years, but this is different in that we were invited by the government, the nation Israel, to come as their guests. And we're going to meet with Benjamin Netanyahu and the mayor of Jerusalem, and a lot of interesting meetings that we're going to have and things we're going to see, and that we're coming as their guest, as I said. So I've never been invited on a trip like this. We'll be doing some media over there as well. And I think it's a great opportunity for the people of Israel to know that we as evangelicals care about them, we love them. We believe that God has placed them in that land. And I personally am very supportive of the fact that we've moved our embassy, or are moving our embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which is their capital, always has been, always will be. So I felt I needed to do this trip. Sorry again, I can't be with you. And that's all I have to say about that. Goodbye. No, I'm kidding. Okay.
All right, so one of my first questions was just that basically there's so many forms of ministry, if you will, but of all the forms that you can use, and they all serve different purposes, how did God capture your heart through the form of crusade specifically? Like, is there a story of where you thought, I want to do this in order to make much of God?
There was a moment when I realized this is what I want to do. I was always aware of Billy Graham as a kid because when my mom was running around doing her crazy stuff, I lived for a period of time with my grandparents who were from Arkansas. So they were great grandparents, and we would watch Billy Graham on television. And so I was aware of him. So after I became a Christian, Billy was preaching in San Diego, which isn't far from where I lived. So I went down and saw him in person. In fact, when he extended the invitation, I walked forward, not to accept Christ. I was actually already pastoring a small church at that point. I just wanted a closer look at this guy. Like, who is this guy? And I watched him up close, and I stood there with people praying, and I left that night saying, that's what I want to do when I grow up.
So you're fascinated by Billy Graham and how God is using him.
Yeah.
What do you think you would have thought if you were to find out that you would one day be working with him, following him, and even helping him kind of come up with sermon illustrations to reach the next generation? I mean, God didn't just expose you to him there. He introduced you to him in a very intimate way.
It was through my relationship with Franklin that I began to know Billy more as a person, went and visited him in his home. And my crusade ministry was just starting, and his was sort of coming to a close. So he asked me to join his board of directors, which I'm still on, the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. And he asked me to help him with sermon illustrations because he wanted to sort of stay current with culture. And so I was, finding illustrations that would fit his sermons. He'd send his sermon, and I would take things from the newspaper, things happening in culture and music and movies, whatever, and find analogies for him. And I'll tell you what, it was so much fun. And I would go up to his room, his hotel room, early in the afternoon. He would be preaching that night. I'd say, well, Billy, here's a few things that I dug up, and I would almost preach them to him. I'd say, so you would say this, and then you'd say this. And he'd just sit there, and he'd be looking at me laying on his bed. He was struggling with some medical problems at that point, so he'd just lay there and look at me and goes, well, I like that. I think I'll use it. And then he'd pick up the phone and call his secretary and say, put this illustration in the sermon. And he'd hang the phone up and let's sit there, and I'd do some more. And I think, how is he going to make it tonight? He just doesn't seem like he has the energy. But boy, I tell you, when he stepped into the pulpit, it's like 30 years fell off of him. Boom! He's Billy Graham. And the first time I heard him use one of my illustrations, I was like over the moon. More excited even than if I'd said it because, well, he's Billy Graham, right?
Yeah.
So getting to know him, not only watching him on the platform, but knowing him as a person was really a way that God was preparing me. I was in the finest evangelistic university on the face of the earth. I was spending time with who I believe is the greatest evangelist of all time.
On the day of the event, I was there, and one of my friends came so late, as well as just parking was insane because
Yeah.
it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so as my friend's coming in, there's all these people that are trying to get in, which I mean, that's a good problem when a lot of
Yeah.
people are trying to hear
Yeah.
the gospel. And some of the cops are stopping these people, and luckily y'all had a whole place where they could watch from outside, but these guys wanted to be inside. And as I'm coming in, a cop said something that was pretty powerful to think about. He said, "Guys, I'm so sorry, we can't let y'all in. This is the first time, I've been here for years." He said, "This is the first time I've ever seen this place have to shut down."
Wow.
And it hit me, I was like, man, of all the events that have
Yeah.
been here, like the concerts and the games,
Yeah.
the event that shuts the place down is the church coming together
praise God.
to share the gospel.
Isn't that great?
And so for me, it's like I'm wondering how important is unity of the church as you guys go city to city and work in a city to create a crusade.
I just wish that we could pull together for what we have in common. I'm sure that everybody at this conference believes that people need to hear the gospel. We all believe the culture is in serious trouble. We all believe that Jesus Christ is still in the business of changing lives. So instead of saying, well, I disagree with that pastor over here or that leader over there because I don't like their musical style, or I don't like the way the pastor dresses, or I don't, really, those are non-essentials. Let's get back to the essentials. You know, sort of our mission statement of Harvest America is one church, one day, one message. We're one church. In the great prayer of Jesus in John 17, which is really the Lord's Prayer, we call the Our Father who art in heaven prayer the Lord's Prayer, but that could better be described as a disciples' prayer because Jesus never prayed that prayer. He gave it in response to the disciples' request, Lord, teach us to pray. Jesus would never pray, forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sinned against us. But the true Lord's Prayer, John 17, is given in its entirety. Christ prayed it out loud so his disciples could hear it. And one of the things he prayed is that we would be one as he and the Father are one. When we fight with each other, when we bicker with each other, especially when we do it publicly, I think this is displeasing to God. Yeah. And, you know, if we have disagreements, and we often do, let's do it behind closed doors. Well, let's try to present a unified church and a unified message to a lost culture. We know Christ is the answer. We know there's power in the message of the gospel. So I'm asking those who are attending, set aside your minor theological and cultural differences, and let's pull together for the sake of the gospel that will be proclaimed on June 10th at Harvest America. I need everybody on board because, you know, you'd think, oh, you did this once, you must be thinking you've got this down. No. In fact, if anything, I'm praying more and we're working harder. You know, I watched the Super Bowl and one of the announcers said that Tom Brady said to him, he wasn't nervous. He said, I'm not nervous. And you know what, it's just like another game. Well, maybe he should have been more nervous, right? You know, it's like this is the big game. That was the Super Bowl. In a way, this is the Super Bowl of evangelism. And here's why. You know, the Super Bowl is, well, it's like a religious event to Americans now, isn't it? On one Sunday, we all stop what we're doing and we watch the game. Some just watch the commercials. We have little parties. That's what Harvest America is. As it's happening live at the AT&T Stadium, it's happening in homes across the United States as people participate in it. So I'm not going to go into it saying, oh, it's just like any other event. No, this is the big one. This is the Super Bowl. We need to really pray.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Just to finish the interview, I want to give you an opportunity maybe to look at the camera or look to the leaders in Dallas and just share a final word to them, especially excited for what's going to come in June.
Thank you very much. Well, I would just say to everybody there, thank you for coming to this conference. And again, I'm sorry I couldn't be with you. But I would like to say, I hope that you will all engage in this outreach in the Metroplex, because this is for you guys. This is for your community. And you know, the great thing about a crusade is yes, it changes non-believers, but you know, it changes believers too. The good thing about a crusade is it can act as a catalyst, sort of a thing to rally around, you know, because a lot of our folks maybe won't bring people to church as much as we would like them to, but there's something about a neutral venue like AT&T Stadium that has a certain appeal, and generally when you go there, you have to pay a lot of money. Our event is free. Yeah. and to use this event, please. And I have found that there has been growth in individual churches in direct proportion to how committed the church was to this event. In other words, like, Grant could come to the event and he accepts Christ, and we find out where he lives. Oh, you live in the Fort Worth area. Well, here's 5 participating churches that you could go to. But the reality is Grant was taken by someone from a church in Dallas. Grant's going to end up in that church. He's going to end up in the church of the person who brought him, regardless of what we say in follow-up. So here's my point. If you get your people involved and they're bringing people who come to Christ at the event, those people will end up in your church. So I hope that you as a pastor, as a ministry leader, will use your platform to help us get the word out. And just let me say in advance, thank you for that, and God bless you.